Well, hello and welcome to Police Watch 2012, and a very happy new year to you and yours, and we wish you all the best throughout the year 2012. Police Watch is back. It's been on a bit of a hiatus from our Cable 14 studios, and we are thrilled that for the first Thursday of the next few months, we'll be coming into your homes, and you'll be able to come into our studios by calling directly, speaking with the chief, speaking with various officers, getting updates on the city, crime stats, you name it, and you get to talk to the chief one-on-one. A rare opportunity from time to time. He's out there a lot, but now's your chance to ask him questions or whatever you would like to ask him or the officers about the city of Hamilton, how safe it's being, and how safe we're going to be keeping it over the years to come. I am your host, Mike Fortune. Pleasure to be here. Live call-in show, 905-645-3232 is the number that we want you to call if you have a question for our chief or our guest. Now let's start off by introducing the chief. Chief, welcome to Cable 14. Happy New Year to you and yours.
Oh, Happy New Year to you as well, Mike. Thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to speak to the people of Hamilton.
Yeah, Chief, it's great to have you here, and I think it's so important that you're allowing basically your access to the community. As I said, you're out there, you're doing your things, you're keeping the city safe, but here putting you on the hot seat to some extent shows a lot of courage, and I give you a thumbs up for coming out.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. We're in the community. Our officers are in the community every single day. We're working with organizations right across the city, and we're always available to answer any questions, and this is no different. It's just a different form and mechanism for us to use, but we're happy to participate.
Yeah, no, that's great. And sitting right next to you, Officer Claus Wagner. Claus, great to see you today. You had a busy last few weeks with the holidays, so on and so forth. You're involved with a lot of the stuff that happens on the roads and on the streets, keeping it all safe. Good to see you, and Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year to you. Thanks. Is that why I'm here? Because you're on the hot seat? You wanted me here? A little bit of big backup there for you, Chief?
He's the hot seat, you're the hot platter when it gets to the table. There you go. Busy time of year, as I mentioned to you, and we'll get to some of those stats. Overall, though, City of Hamilton, thumbs up?
Yeah, definitely. Our officers did a great job with R.I.D.E enforcement. We were out there a lot. With our partnership with the Bulldogs, we had lots of people at the ride lanes I was at that actually drove by, came back because they knew we were giving out the tickets for the free game with the Bulldogs, and going through the ride lanes and saying to us, you know, it's a great job, good to see you out there, and that's what it's all about, is them seeing us out there and knowing and making the right decisions.
I want to get into some of the 2011 stats and some of the particulars that we want to talk about in your segment, but before we do that, Chief, I want to get to you. Your overall impressions on the year 2011, where it was, how you as a community, as we as a community and you as a policing staff got through it. Overall, are you happy?
2011 was a banner year for the Hamilton Police Service. On the back of 2010, the organization took a pause on many fronts. We completed a full organizational review and environmental scan, a complete restructuring of the organization. We have put some new policies and procedures in place. And on a service delivery front, 2011 was absolutely magnificent for our people. They were out there every day, bringing their absolute professional best to their profession here in Hamilton in service to the community. Number of arrests, number of enforcement opportunities, ride lanes, a big success for us as well. And challenges, we continue to be challenged in a number of areas on our roads, the driving and people driving and their skill and ability during the time that they operate a motor vehicle. We did, unfortunately, 2010 have 24 fatalities on our streets. 2011, that was reduced to 21. That is still too many, and one of the priority projects, obviously, for our service will continue to be traffic and road safety. And our areas of concern continue to be impaired driving. They continue to be pedestrian safety, cyclist safety. Unfortunately, the number of pedestrians that were killed last year, a fair number of those citizens were senior citizens. So we need to continue our education and our prevention efforts around cyclist safety, pedestrian safety, and try to reduce the fatalities. And we've absolutely got to focus on reducing the incidence of impaired driving on our streets.
905-645-3232 is the number we want you to call to get involved with Police Watch 2012, the first edition here in January. I'm Mike Fortune, along with the Chief of Police and Officer Wagner. And Chief, you set it up really nicely here. It's like you've done this before for Officer Wagner. Let's talk a little bit about the past 2 weeks. Let's talk about impaired driving right now as a whole? It's still, unfortunately, with all the messages, with MAD out there, everything, why do people still do it?
It's not the, what I always say, it's not the casual drinker that we're stopping. These are people that are, on average, are twice the legal limit. So these are people that have drank alcohol to the point where they're not making the right decisions. They're getting behind the wheel. The one good positive part for us at the Hamilton Police Service is our third of our arrests because of alcohol-related driving offenses is because of Operation Lookout. People calling it in, fast food restaurants or people going, into the liquor store trying to buy alcohol. They're calling us, not serving them, and letting us know, and we're making those arrests, and that's huge for us. It shows that people have had enough of it, and that's when our numbers go up a little bit like that. So it's not that there's more people out there; it's just we're catching them, and things we've put in place where our officers are able to get back on the street quicker to make another arrest that way is always positive for us.
Tweeting is a huge thing. It's taken over our society, and over the holidays, you can actually follow Hamilton Police on Twitter or Facebook. People were tweeting where your ride programs are. I heard some people who are very disgruntled about that. Why are you giving people who are drinking a heads up so they can avoid them? And I've heard some reasons why it's not a bad thing. What are your thoughts on tweeting where ride programs are?
It's all about road safety, and for us, and for me personally, it's getting the message out. They know we're out there, and maybe when they see that tweet come up on when they're at the bar or at the person's house or at home, they'll say to themselves, you know what, they're out there doing their job, and they maybe won't go make that good decision and stay home or get a cab or take a bus or call a friend, and that's what we want them to do. So I look at it as a positive. That way, it gets the information out virally even more.
What are some of the stats or some of the ages you're seeing? You're on the roads. You're in the bitter cold. You're out there at night along with your officers. Is it mostly young drivers? Is it middle-aged like me? Is it the olders? What would you say are the ones that blow over right near?
The average monthly, almost month to month every year, comes down to between 35 and 45, right in that area. The average number of the 50 people we arrest for impaired driving. We do have sometimes 16, 17-year-olds, new drivers that aren't supposed to be drinking at all. Yeah. And now they're not only drinking, they're drinking and they're getting behind the wheel of a car. So they're really making bad decisions. And we address that situation that way by talking to parents and family in that way. But it still is that middle-age group there that's out there. Why? Is it because there's more of them working or all those things? But they are still making the bad decision, getting behind the wheel of a car. And fortunately, we're catching them.
Yeah. We have a clip of that ride program. I don't know if we got it set up now. Well, let's give it another second. We'll take a look at it. How many ride programs did you set up this past holiday season?
Well, we stopped over 40,000 vehicles. We had at least over the holiday season, and that's for us starting around November 25th, right up till January 6th, which will be tomorrow. We have at least 2 to 3 every night. Each division is doing it. Mm-hmm. Plus we get sponsorship through the provincial government, and we bring extra officers in to do ride lanes that way.
And here we see some clips of a ride program. Again, you're not there to be mean. You're just checking.
Yeah, and we're checking for alcohol, and with the new drug enforcement program we have here in Hamilton, which we increased last year. We made 14 arrests where people were were driving with drugs in their systems, and we were able to detect that, and our officers are getting better at that. So we went from 7 in 2010 to 14 last year, and it's a new challenge because a lot of young people don't think that just because they smoked a couple of joints that they're okay to go. No, they're not. It's affecting the way they drive, and that old nostalgia idea that it's not alcohol, it doesn't matter anymore.
Chief, have you been involved in some ride programs over the years and even this year by any chance?
I've done ride lanes in my career, and this weekend I had opportunity to work New Year's Eve with our officers out on the road. I was out there from about 7 at night till 4 in the morning, mm-hmm. and did ride lanes in the East End with the officers that set up at the Queenston Traffic Circle. And our experience there as we did ride lanes for that hour and a half, the people coming through were respectful, they were courteous, they understand the reason that we're doing this. It's about road and traffic safety, and there were no issues with anybody that was involved in the ride spot check that night. A number of people were stopped, a number of roadside tests were done. all of the people that night passed.
Excellent.
And what we were able to do by having that spot check out there, and those occurred right across the entire city. They do every single day, but on New Year's we certainly had a lot of teams out doing that, and we had no issues with impaired driving that night.
So you just mentioned you do ride programs throughout the year. Obviously, this is the time of season that they are increased heavily. The middle of June, you'll do a ride program. The middle of, I know May long weekend, but middle of August, ride programs are always happening?
Yes. The Highway Traffic Act allows us to do it, and we're out there because it needs to be something that's out there 365. People continuously need to be reminded that it's unacceptable in society now to get behind the wheel. And we're not talking about 10 or 15 drinks. We're talking about, you have 3 or 4. There's sanctions in place that, where you're in that Warren Range area where you're going to lose your license for 3 days. And my message always is you can't think about just losing your license for 3 days. Now, for 3 days, your kids won't be able to get to soccer or hockey or to dance or to vocals or whatever it is, because you don't have your car and you don't have a license. And it's a huger impact because you've made that bad decision.
And with the economic crisis we are in, your insurance, even if you're a 3-day loss, the insurance company is notified. It goes right up, skyrockets, doesn't it?
Well, the impact on people's lives. Let's talk about that for a minute. We've talked about R.I.D.E and R.I.D.E stats, and we sometimes get stuck in the numbers. Let's talk about what actually takes place, Mike, on our streets every single year. A number of people are killed, and last year we did see in the traffic fatalities 4 people lost their lives as a result of being involved in drinking driving situations. And we have the cost of the criminal charges, the cost to the judicial system, the cost for the police enforcement. We have the personal human carnage that takes place. Let's not forget that it's our officers that respond to these accidents and see what takes place when alcohol is involved in the driving. But as we have said many times and will continue to say, all those costs can be avoided because it is a 100% preventable criminal offense, and compliance is absolutely free.
Very well said. Very well said, Chief. We actually have a clip on some impaired driving. We will get that coming up. Part of your job that you enjoy, you must get a thrill out of a night when you've had to pull people over, but when they all pass, you just must be like, hey, the message is getting out there.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And they're telling us that too. They're, that they make those good choices. Or a lot of the ones we get stopped, and you probably had it too that night, Chief, was parents picking their kids up. Okay. So there's 3 kids in the car that that have had a good night, and they made the right decision. They phoned the parent. They weren't embarrassed. They weren't afraid, and the parent showed up at 2 in the morning to pick them up, and that's what's important. Or a friend. It really is. There's no embarrassment to say, I've had too much. Yeah. Can I stay over, or can I get a ride home, or put something aside to make sure you have a way of getting home.
Let's take a look at that ride stat graphic. I think we have that coming up right now. There you see the stats, Officer Wagner. Why don't you take us just through some of those and how impressed you are, or is there still room for improvement?
Well, we're always looking for improvement, but yeah, our officers were doing a great job. Again, because of things we have in place, that they have time to get out there and set up a ride program if it's for an hour or an hour and a half. So those are vehicles stopped. We stop them, we speak to them. If we smell some alcohol, or if they admit to having some alcohol, we may give them a roadside test, and that's where you see where it says roadside demand there, where we demand somebody that has to blow into it. And you have to give us a sample because we're demanding it. If you refuse to, that's a criminal charge. So most people do, as you see. 378, so almost 90% are passing when they do it. But it makes them think, because they know how much they had to drink, and the number comes up now, and it's not always that 1 glass that they figured they had. Draft is actually 2 beers when you have a draft. So, and then we straight impaired charges where somebody's pulled into the ride lane and we've arrested them directly right off the bat that they've had too much alcohol on it.
When you've pulled these people over, and these are some great stats, you're looking for the glossy eyes, you're smelling for the alcohol, you're smelling for the substances possibly. You're also looking for proper seatbelt use. You must be also looking to make sure that kids are put in their car seats properly. There's a lot of other things you guys are looking for, and ladies are looking for.
Well, the issue with respect to the legislation on impaired driving and the legal authority to pull people over in a ride spot check situation. The law is abundantly clear. Police officers have that authority for the purpose of detecting alcohol. We need to be very, very careful about which authorities we are using at which time. If we were doing a vehicle safety check lane or a truck safety check lane, then we use different authorities that give us the availability to check for other things. Right. But with respect to alcohol and impaired driving, that is what we are checking for, and that's what the Supreme Court of Canada has ruled in the legislation. That's what you're allowed to check for. That's what we check for. So although we do see those other things, and we will speak to people about those, we always want to keep kids safe. We always want to keep drivers safe. We'll talk about those, but the purpose of those is strictly alcohol.
905-645-3232 is the number that we ask you to call, so you have a chance to speak with the chief, or if you have any questions for Officer Wagner. We're live here at the Cable 14 studios. Let's talk a little bit about distracted drivers. We all got them. Blackberries, cell phones, you name it. It was widely talked about over the media about a year or so ago. The 3 month information sessions we're going to give, we catch you, and then that went away. I'm telling you guys, I still see people on a very regular basis doing this, at a stoplight doing this. How do we get that message across?
They have to understand that a car traveling 50 kilometers an hour and you look down for 5 seconds, you've driven almost a block with your head down. And we know in our city how many things can happen in one block. They have to be aware of it. There's all kinds of things now in place. You were talking about tweeting and stuff like that about where we are. Well, there's things in place to say, you know, are you that important that that message has to be answered right then and there? You know, it takes a second to pull over, or if you have the the Bluetooth or all the things that the new car companies are coming up with. But just shutting it off, is it really, we did it without it before, is it that important to have it on and take that message that you need to bring milk home?
Yeah, and here we see a great clip right now. There's what you shouldn't be doing right there, and it's so easy to do.
That's the most common offense that we're seeing out there right now. The fine for distracted driving is $155. And we're trying to obviously we did a period of 3 months where we did the prevention and education component with no enforcement, and we brought it to people's attention. And now we're fully into the enforcement mode. Where it is very tragic is when we come upon accidents and we investigate accidents, and then in our investigation we determine that the cause of that is inattention to their driving by having a device in their hand or sending messages or being on the phone. And some of those have in fact been tragic in other jurisdictions, and we don't want that to happen here.
Would it help more, and I don't know what legislations this would have to go through, if you added points to the fine as well? Would that scare people more? I don't know. Has it been talked about? Well,
points added to it is certainly a consideration. We can approach the government and look for modifications to the Highway Traffic Act in fines and in points. The issue is that driving is not a right. Driving is a privilege, and it's a privilege that is conveyed upon people when they meet certain criteria, they pass the tests, but that privilege can be withdrawn at any minute. Yeah. And if you're not paying attention to what the rules of the road are, and you are in fact endangering other people's lives, maybe it's an opportunity for us to take that license.
You talked about endangering lives. We have some stats regarding impaired driving from 2010, 2011, I'm assuming that they're going to be coming up. Well, yeah, 2010, 2011. We'll take a look at those while the guys are getting. Oh, there they are, right there. Impaired driving stats for 2011. Officer Wagner. Hey, you know what? Not bad, but again, room for improvement. And it's sad to see, you know, the refused breath. It's sad to see the impaired causing death. You know,
that's the most disappointing one for me personally, because I'm out there in the schools and talking about it on shows like this and on the radio. These are just bad choices. They really are. They're just there's so many mechanisms out there to get home without getting behind the wheel of a car when you've had alcohol in your. The biggest thing people still need to understand is being impaired and being over the legal limit are two separate charges here in Canada. They're not like in America where it's just one charge. Here it's two different charges. So you don't have to be impaired to be over the legal limit. You know, you have a few drinks, like I said, you could lose your license for 3 days, but at a certain point you're going to lose a lot more than just your license. You're going to lose your car. You're going to lose your car for 7 days. If you get caught driving, once you're convicted, you're going to lose your car for 45 days. And like I said, that takes a lot away from family income, from everything that goes around with it. So when our charges are up, it's a good thing. It's because we're out there doing our job, but it's still a lot of people making bad choices.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hey, Hamilton, something that we can work towards, and I know there's a lot of marketing and advertising out there, a lot of like MAD and all that, trying to get that message across, and of course you you find folks are still continuing to educate and let people know. I want to get back to some of the distractions. We've had this debate at the office, and I think I know what the answer is. I'm talking about our office at where I work. You're at a stoplight, and you're 2 or 3 cars back. Can you pick up your cell phone and send out a text saying, "Hey, I'm on my way," or is that still considered being distracted?
It's still being distracted. The only way that you can do that is if you pull off the roadway. And for policing, the roadway is the actual traveled portion, so you have to be off the actual traveled portion. So pull over under the shoulder. That way, then you can use your cell phone properly and legally. And that's what what we're suggesting. You should, like, if you're going to have it on, that's what you have to do.
Okay. You know what, folks? We got our first caller of the night. I'm excited. Lee, welcome to Police Watch. You are the first caller of 2012. Welcome. How can we help you tonight?
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Basically, I'm just wondering, what would you guys do in a situation where you see drivers with dogs, like, on their laps? I see it a lot around Hamilton, mostly in the situation, I don't want to stereotype, but a lot of the time it's elderly drivers. They have lap dogs on their laps, driving around. The dog is looking out the driver's side window. It's right there in front of the steering wheel. It's going from passenger's seat to the driver's seat, back and forth. I find that extremely dangerous.
You brought up a great point. I've seen it too, and I don't understand how it's possible to even drive like that.
Well, there is a charge under the Highway Traffic Act for crowding the driver, and if that's what the dog is doing, if my officers or our officers see that, that would be the appropriate charge, because you're right, it's affecting the way you drive the car, and also if you were to get in an accident, now you're putting that dog at risk, you're putting yourself, because it'll fly around, and if that airbag goes off, Lee, you know what that dog's going to be? It's going to be pushed up against you, and it's going to cause more damage to yourself. So, we do pull those cars over sometimes and tell them, there are, put them in the back seat. There is, I think, doggy harnesses now you can even, to keep the dog in place. It is an unsafe thing to do.
Lee, just to follow up on your question, because that's a great point. What about when you see a dog and he's on the passenger side or in the back seat and he's sticking his whole head out the window? I'm afraid the dog's going to fall out. He falls out. Oncoming car slams on the brakes, right, Lee?
There's a huge, accident issue right there as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that could cause like a 4, 5, 6 vehicle accident. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a pet owner myself, but I find like I see that a lot. And I don't think I've ever once seen a vehicle pulled over for that. You know what I mean? I might be wrong, but I just find like that's a huge issue, and I see it quite often.
Yeah, Lee, thank you very much for the call, and you brought up a good point. I think we've all seen it. You guys are obviously aware of it. You're keeping an eye open for it, but really, you can't be everywhere at all times. And that's what I think it comes down to as well.
Well, it's tough to be out there everywhere, but there's a responsibility on the drivers to operate their vehicle in a safe manner. And if you are operating a vehicle without due care and attention to what is taking place around you, that offense is in fact careless driving. Right. And that can be constituted in many ways. If it's the dog obstructing your view and you're not dealing with that, that's one of the issues that we would certainly take into consideration. This is a problem. We have had injuries to people, and we have had injuries to animals in some collisions.
Yeah, and like you said earlier in the show, Chief, driving is a privilege, not a right. So again, it's your animal. It's part of your family. Keep it safe as well. We have another caller on the line right now. Welcome to the program, Brian. You're watching Police Watch on Cable 14. Say hi to the Chief and Officer Wagner.
Hello, Chief Officer Wagner. Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Hi, Brian.
I guess it's an age-old problem, or it's getting a worse of a problem, is red light running and rolling through stop signs. And I guess when I learned to drive many, many years ago, I was taught to come to a complete stop, and I was taught that a yellow light is caution, and it seems to me that those rules are right out the window now, and it's getting more serious all the time. I'm seeing trucks, school buses, every vehicle on the road seems to run through these lights periodically. What can the police department do to try to bring this back under control, if anything?
Well, this is an area that we spend an awful lot of time working on in our enforcement efforts and with our education and prevention programs. We're working with the schools where young people are taking their courses. We have our officers working in the schools that are constantly talking to young people that are getting their driver's licenses. We're trying to do that education component. This is really strictly an enforcement issue. It's about compliance. And stop signs and red lights in law are offenses of what is referred to as absolute jurisdiction. That means that there is no excuse for running the stop sign and running a red light. It is an absolute jurisdiction offense. You must come to a full and complete stop. What the city has done in working in concert with Roads and Traffic and the city and the police service is we now have a number of red light cameras that are placed around the city. Some of those are permanent locations and some of those are mobile, and they do change from location to location based on accident collision statistics, cyclist, pedestrian injuries. We analyze all of that information and then we'll move those cameras. The city will do that for us. So we have technology that is helping us, and we certainly have enforcement. But the biggest thing again is getting right back to compliance, and that is a driver responsibility.
Thank you. I think you're right. We need to see it happen more and more. So thanks for your comments.
Thank you.
Brian, thank you very much. I'm going to admit this live on camera. I got hit about 4 or 5 years ago coming to a rolling stop. And as soon as I made the turn, I saw the officer there. And I knew right away. Well, let me tell you, what's the ticket for that? $150, $200? I don't even know what it is nowadays. It was expensive back in the day, for me at least. I don't do it anymore. Mm-hmm. And like Brian, it infuriates me, especially in my neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood where there's a park, there's a school, there's families, and it's a 3-way stop, and no one stops. They slow down. And then what really annoys me is when I come to a full and complete stop, the person behind me sometimes gets upset because I'm holding them up. And then that can go into road rage, and there's a whole other topic that we can start to talk about. It just seems like it's an ongoing circle.
Yeah, the issues generally around neighborhoods and traffic complaints from our experience, and we go to a ton of community meetings all year long in different neighborhoods, and traffic is always the #1 issue that is brought to our attention. And when people complain about what is going on in their neighborhood, and then we respond to that with enforcement efforts through our Divisional Safety Officer program or our frontline patrol officers, generally when we set up on those streets and observe those intersections, we will end up charging a great number of people within their own neighborhood. They're not transient traffic that is traveling through the neighborhood. It's the people that live there. So those are your homes, that's your neighborhood, those are your kids that are walking those streets. Yeah. Please stop at those stop signs.
No, I agree completely. Great call from Brian, thank you, and some great comments there. Officer, winter driving. We've been pretty lucky so far. Not too much snow, a little bit of ice and rain. But again, people have that lapse. They forget how to drive when it gets slick, when it gets snowy, they travel too close. A lot of common sense just goes poof out the window. Can you please give our viewers some reminders and some tips going into 2012 with the snow? It's going to be just around the corner, big time.
For sure. The #1 thing is speed, and you said it yourself, is the speed limits are set for good conditions. When the weather's bad, you got to slow down at least 10 kilometers an hour below, if not more. And then adjusting your speed, following the other vehicle ahead of you. I see it all the time when we drive on our highways, is driving right behind somebody. Your stopping distance, your reactionary time is going to all be affected by that bad weather. So slow down, keep behind somebody a little bit, give yourself more distance, and be prepared for the winter conditions. We know, like you said, Mike, you know what's coming. Make sure your windshield washer's fluids is topped up, that you have appropriate weather gear in case you do get stuck, that the car is going to have enough gas if you end up getting in a traffic jam or where the roads are shut down that way. These are all the things that might be affecting you in your mind, because now you're driving in bad weather and you're thinking, I need gas, and you may do something because your mind's taken away for a second, and that's where you're going to get yourself in a jackpot situation.
And another thing I'd like to add, if you don't mind, and again, I'm just seeing, it's really great having you guys on the show here, but I'm able to ask you guys face to face about things I've seen or reminders now. Give yourself a little extra time in the winter and clear off your entire windshield, all your windows, and even the snow on top of your car if you can, because you don't want blowing snow. I saw a lady last week, no word of a lie, she just uncovered a little spot right in front of her. Her whole passenger, you couldn't see, it was all snow. Those are things too. Give yourself time, clean off your vehicle.
Yeah. It's all everybody's in a rush. You know, like I always say, you know, you push yourself, and then you brought up a good point. I wanted to jump on it, is when you were saying it starts road rage. Road rage, where something happens down the road, didn't start right then and there. It started maybe 5, 6, 10 blocks or earlier. I call it the whistle effect. I walk by you, singing a tune, and you pick up the tune and walk on. Well, it's the same thing in road rage. I tailgate you, so now you get upset, you turn off, you're a little bit upset, now you start to tailgate somebody, that person gets upset, and down the road we maybe have a collision because of something that happened way farther back. We all need to take a breath sometimes and just, say, we're all in life together, let's all get there where we need to go, do it with a smile. That's what I try to do when I do any type of traffic enforcement. If I'm going to do an education part, they're going to be told about the whole story. If I do traffic control, I try to do it with a smile. It makes a huge difference because we all are busy, but we're not that busy. Is my life more important than somebody else's? Is that text message more important? Is that extra drink that important? It isn't.
Yeah, you know what? You've brought up some really great points, and this has been a great first half of our show. And Officer Wagner, I can't thank you enough. I look forward to having you on again at some point throughout the year. Before I let you go, before we go to a break, any final comments to our viewers out there?
The biggest thing, like I said, is the speed factor. It really is becoming a problem that way, where people are not giving themselves enough time. And then when you speed, your decision making happens a lot quicker and you're not prepared for it. And especially with more and more young drivers on the roads nowadays, we need to get along that way, give everybody breaks, make yourself visible. If you're a pedestrian, make sure you're walking at the crosswalks, making sure that you give yourself time to cross the street. That red hand blinking for pedestrians is like the yellow light. That means you shouldn't enter the crosswalk. That red hand doesn't mean you have enough time to get across sometimes. And because the other driver coming up the curb lane might not see you, and that's where we have some issues sometimes. So just all work in harmony. That's what I always try to say: bicyclists, pedestrians, and car drivers.
Officer Wagner, once again, thank you very much. If you want some great tips on these topics and others, go to their website, hamiltonpolice.on.ca, or you can follow Hamilton Police on Facebook or Twitter. You're watching Police Watch here on Cable 14. We'll be back right after this break.
We are Cable 14. We are Cable 14.
We are Cable 14.
We are Cable 14.
We are Cable 14.
We are Cable 14.
We are Cable 14.
Your community, only on cable. Only on Cable 14.
Hey, Travis.
Get some friends, loser.
Bro, you all right, man?
Lean on me.
Thanks.
When you're not strong, and I'll be
Character. Pass it on.
I'll help you carry.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
I am Alan Drummond, an emergency physician in Perth, Ontario. I see the tragic consequences of improperly handled firearms too often. It is important to store firearms safely to prevent loss or theft, injuries, and death. If there are firearms in your home, be sure they are unloaded and locked before storing. Store them in a firearms cabinet. Store the ammunition separately and lock it up. You can help stop firearms tragedies before they reach my emergency department. Be responsible, prevent a tragedy. Thank you.
Taxi!
When you can't do it all, do what you can. Compassion for others. Pass it on. A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Well, hello and welcome back to Police Watch 2012. I am your host, Mike Fortune, and the first half of the show was really interesting with a lot of impaired statistics, R.I.D.E program statistics. And again, I'd like to thank Officer Wagner for bringing his expertise to this show, and again, reminding the fellow Hamiltonians how important it is to be safe when you're in your vehicle. This is Police Watch. It is a live call-in show. You can call us at 905-645-3232. And now you're going to get the chief one-on-one if you like. So whatever questions, thoughts, comments you have, it is now the opportunity to speak to the chief. And Chief, before we get into the budget stuff and all that, we actually have an email that I want to go to. Don't know who it's from. Can we pop that email up on the screen and we will see what the question is? There we go. I want to pass on congratulations to the chief for such a successful year for the Hamilton Police Service. I would also like to give kudos for his initiative behind the proactive approach to social media, i.e. the action team on Twitter. Amazing idea to stay connected to the community. Sergeant Turner does an excellent job with it, from Ryan. It is very easy for people, the general public, to criticize politicians, mayors, chief of fire, chief of police.
Yep.
It's great when we see these comments. To the people that are critical and who have never walked in those shoes, what message or what would you like to convey to them?
Well, we're going to talk about budget in a few minutes, and we have some slides that we're going to present. One of the issues that we think needs to be more fully understood in our community is the complexity of our work and the volume and frequency of our work, most of which we do is very much unseen in our community. Our friends in the media work very closely with us on crimes and when we're looking for missing people and wanted parties, and there is a huge responsibility on both the police service and the media to cooperate together to get all the information out that we can. One of the things that we have to get out there more is the totality of the work that is getting done. And I have to tell you that from my position at the back of the organization, when I get to look forward to the front line of our organization and see the service delivery that takes place there every single day, it is absolutely amazing what our officers are doing. A couple of instances that I draw to your attention. We had one of our officers, Mark Miller. He investigated a break and enter a little while ago, and it was into a gentleman's home. The gentleman was disabled, and the break and enter, the thief stole the computer. The computer was in fact the lifeline for that gentleman to the greater world, to the outside world. Mark Miller took it upon himself. He refurbished an old computer of his. He got a monitor. He got a keyboard. He set the gentleman back up and reconnected him with the outside world. Just something that has absolute wow factor to it. Yeah. Customer service at the greatest level. Another example, many people in our community know Jack Vanderpool. Jack Vanderpool, raised here in Hamilton, came through with a basketball program. Jack is a big man. I think he stands about 6'4", 6'5". A couple of weeks ago, he's in a situation where he was called and responded to a call from a mother. The baby had stopped breathing, and Big Jack goes into the house, takes control, applies first aid to the baby, restarts the breathing, and saves the child's life. Many of these things happen in our city every day, and that's just the work that we do. But our people are doing a phenomenal job.
905-645-3232 is the number that we ask that you call to get in touch with us here at Cable 14, so you can speak to the Chief of Police in the great city of Hamilton. You mentioned the budget. We're going to talk about that a little bit now, Chief. You made the presentation to the Police Board Services. There's a number of fine folks on that, including Councillor Morelli, I know. Not an easy process. City's trying to save money. You guys need money. You need to add services, whatever the case might be. Talk to us a little bit about the process of putting this budget together.
Well, the budget process starts for us very, very early in the year in building the budget for the next year. We have all sorts of mechanisms in place for supervisors, supervisory overview, cost containment initiatives in court, in overtime. We have all those business processes in place. But building the budget and bringing it forward is a long process for us. And we use zero-based budgeting techniques. We also use historical analysis and trend analysis in coming up with what our budget forecasts will be. Then we present the budget forecast to the board. The budget actually is the board's budget. It is not the services budget. Okay. It belongs to the Police Service Board, and the board then, through the Office of the Chief, advanced that to Council. Okay. Our budget request this year is 3.43%, which is $4.5 million over last year. It is, at this point, the second lowest budget request that has been made from the Hamilton Police Service in the last 10 years. So we are doing our fiscal responsibility. We're doing our absolute best to make sure that we provide our services in the most cost-effective and efficient way. As you can see by the slide on the screen there, the budget pressures of 3.6%, $4.7 million for salary and benefits. That is made up of the salary increase, the OMERS pension, and our benefits contribution. What's important here, Mike, as you look at this slide is the salary and benefit portion, the pressure is 3.6%, and yet our total budget this year is coming in at 3.43%. So we were able to find reductions and efficiencies in other areas in order to offset some of that. So that's where we have done an awful lot of work to make sure that we are fiscally and financially responsible.
Now, where you had to take some of the budget away, will that affect programs or certain parts of the department, or will that all remain status quo where you had to take some of that money away?
Our issue in delivering service is to make sure that Hamilton is as safe tomorrow as it is today. And we require that funding in order to keep those programs in place. Some of the areas that we have had a look at in cost containment or cost reductions include our school resource officers. They include looking at all of the outreach initiatives, our education components. We are doing a lot of work in the schools around graffiti eradication. We're doing a lot of work with young people on gang exit strategies. We are working with our community partners. We partner with the John Howard Society. We partner with many agencies in the community, and they are offering phenomenal services that help to support policing. And what we're trying to do with the budget is also, before we come forward and ask for additional money or additional staff, we have completed an entire review of our own organization. We have done this year a 5-year workload analysis, which joins to a previous 5-year workload analysis. So we have 10 years of research data on what is happening with work in our city, distributed across the city. We've also this year done a 7-year strategic staffing plan. And one of the big things that we've done this year is, in concert with our business plan, which is one of the goals, is to reduce the amount of administrative time that is on the backs of our frontline officers. We don't want officers in the report room doing reports. We want frontline officers out there on the street on the front line. What we have done this year is we have put in place a case preparation unit. It is a pilot project. It is being headed by Deputy Chief Eric Gert and Inspector Ken Weatherall, and their staff have put together a plan where we are taking paperwork off of the frontline officers, and our goal was to remove 20% administrative time from the front line. Okay. We did not reach the goal of 20%. In the first 2 months, we reached the standard of 73%. So what that means is we need to invest more money in the case preparation unit in order to free up time for our officers to be out there on the street to respond to the calls for service. Why is that important? We have, on average, every year in the city, 85,000 calls for service from the public. Yeah. We have an additional 120,000 calls that are generated through our investigations for follow-up, for proactive work, for enforcement. And our work over the last 5 years has increased, Mike, by 36,000 hours. 36,000 hours of work is equivalent to hiring 21 police officers. We did not hire 21 police officers. Right. So that work was absorbed into the service. In running the business of providing policing service, we have done everything this year to make sure that we are effective, efficient, that we are removing administrative barriers from our burdens from our officer, and that we are providing the quality service that we need. And we look at our response times to all areas of the city. We look at those on a monthly basis to make sure that we're meeting all of our targets.
Let's take a look at another stat here, and while we're getting that set up, 905-645-3232 is the number that we want you to call to speak directly to the Chief of Police. It's the 10-year crime rates. Little hard to see for me, so I'm going to get my little cheat sheet in front of me here, Chief. You have something circled there between 2009 2010, total violent crime rates.
Yeah, Mike, what this shows the viewers and shows the people of Hamilton is that the general trend in crime is decreasing. And that is a very positive thing. To see the crime rate decreasing, to see violent crime decreasing, that's all very positive. Now, the question is often posed to us, well, if crime trends are reducing, then why do you need so many police officers? Why do you need so many programs in place? And it's our belief, if you go back 30 years ago to when police really bought into the concept of community-based policing, that's policing with the community, not policing in the community, but policing with the community. If you had shown people 30 years ago this slide and said, this is where we will be in 30 years, the people who constructed these philosophies of policing, they would be absolutely ecstatic. And here we are now, having attained these goals, and we need to continue on in the right direction. And that's why we think that investing in policing, even in tough economic times, investment in policing produces a great return on investment. It's easy on that slide to also look at the ratios and get tied up in the mathematics of it, but let me put it into some real perspective for you so we have context.
Yes.
If you take those ratios and apply them to real people, what that means in the city of Hamilton is if you stand at center field in Ivor Wynne Stadium and the entire stadium is filled to capacity with 28,000 people, every single person in that stadium last year was the victim of a criminal offense. And if you look at just the north stands and you divide the north stands in half, on the left-hand side would be about 7,000 people. 7,000 people in our city last year were the victim of a violent crime. And my question really to you is, what's the acceptable level of crime? So although the trends are continuing downward and they are continuing in a positive trend, we have to continue to focus on what those programs are that prevent that. We still face real challenges in our community with domestic violence, violence against women, the protection of children, all of which we are going to continue to work on so that we can hopefully eliminate a lot of that activity.
And I saw a stat too, I don't have it memorized as well as you do, but by the year 2031, I believe it is, we're going to be well over, in the city of Hamilton, well over 650,000 residents. So with that, we know that the policing hiring also, it all has to go up because more people come to the city.
Well, we know that our city is growing, and particularly on the mountain, we see the amount of development that is going on, the new subdivisions. The city of Hamilton right now has about 2,900 kilometers of roadway that we are required to police. That does not include the number of unassumed roads where people are living right now that are going through the construction process. We have to patrol all of that roadway, and our roads are increasing at a rate of about 1.1% per year. So we know that our city is growing. We just had last year over $1 billion for the first time in Hamilton's history. $1 billion worth of building permits were applied for. So we know that the development is coming. We're seeing a revitalization, particularly in the downtown area. That's why our action strategy is so important. A big part of economic development is public safety. People need to be safe and they need to feel safe. That's why we have put 40 officers into the action strategy. That's why this year we're enhancing that action strategy with what we're calling a social navigator. It's not a social worker, Mike, but we want a social navigator to work with us in the police service so that when we deal with people that need services in our community, and our community has lots of services available to people, we need to have a mechanism in place that we can help people to get off the street, to get work, to deal with drug and alcohol addiction, to deal with the issues of mental illness. It's often our officers on the front line that deal with that first. So we're enhancing that program to make sure that the community is safe.
And there's another whole hour show right there. You hit it right at the end there, mental illness. That is an illness that you guys just must see on a daily basis. And it's something that isn't talked about. There's the suicide, there's everything that goes on in this city. Things that aren't talked about, but still we need to educate and let people know that there are options. There are people to talk to. You're not in this alone.
Well, there's a fantastic amount of work that is already getting done in that area. On our behalf, the Hamilton Police Service, our frontline officers, on average deal with about 2,000 apprehensions pursuant to the Mental Health Act every single year. That's dealing with people suffering emotional crisis or mental disorder that we invoke the authorities of the Mental Health Act. You mentioned suicide, and I believe it's 2010. We had about 58 suicides take place in our city. The numbers I looked at just recently for this year seem to be in the neighborhood of about 37. However, the year-end numbers are not actually in and tallied at this point. But we have a terrific program here run by Terry McGurk and a number of people who have come together as the Hamilton Suicide Prevention Collaborative, and they have done an awful lot of work about highlighting that issue. And there is a number of resources out there that will help people, particularly young people. You are not in this alone. There are a number of agencies out there. Reach out, get some help, and I will tell every one of our viewers that is watching that the Hamilton Police Service will be the first ones there to help you.
Really good to know. Maybe a topic for a future show. We have another email I was just told about before we get to our next graphic, if we can pull that up and take a look at it. In light of the provincial government cleaning up and greatly improving the security industry over the last 2 years with better training and hiring criteria, I was wondering, can the police hire security guards at a very low cost to do some of the light police duties? In other words, subcontract good security guards to save on the police budget. Chief, answer to Bob's email there?
Well, it's a good idea, and it has been looked at before, and one of the things that we need to be aware of is what are the authorities that are required to do particular jobs.
Right.
We have special constables in place, special constables that look after all of the prisoner custody and care. They have in law special authorities that are not granted to a security guard. So we have to be very careful about what the authorities are that are required, and we are office holders. Security guards are not office holders. And we in fact have contracts in place, collective agreements in place, and those are agreements between the Police Services Board and the Hamilton Police Association or the Hamilton Senior Officers Association. And they actually lay out the duties and responsibilities and who can do what. And when you start parsing off work that belongs to police officers, we need to be very careful in how we do that.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. It really does. And Bob, thank you very much for the email. I appreciate that. We have another graphic that we would like to bring up, and this one was part of the budgeting process, titled Demand on Resources. And we see here from 2006 to 2011, 4 or 5 different categories. Chief, can you touch on this and how important these stats are and what they explain to the public?
Well, Mike, this is a very important graphic that has been presented in public. It's been presented to the Police Services Board. It will be presented to Council. This is the same presentation that the Police Service delivered last year. It's about educating the community about the complexity and about the frequency and volume of our work. There are in Hamilton every year, as you can see across the top line, about 13,000 thefts that take place, and that is the category of theft under. Court administration is particularly interesting. Now we need to think about this and have the viewers think about it. These are offenses where we have arrested individuals, charged them, put them before the court. They have gone through the bail program. They have been granted bail by the court, and they are out on conditions. About 2,500 times a year, we rearrest those people for failing to comply with those conditions and bring them back before the courts. Mischief, a lot of which is damage to people's property, and graffiti happens at a rate of about 5,000 incidents per year. Impaired operation, and we spoke about this in the early parts of the program. Our enforcement for impaired driving this year will show us that we have the highest number of impaired drivers arrested in 2011 than we have in the last 15 years. And people are dying on our roads. Drugs is the next category. We have processed about, again, will be about 2,000 drug cases this year. And as you can see from 2006 to 2009, where it's around 1,400, in the last 2 years, we have increased our drug enforcement by 400 cases in each of the 2 years. Fraud is a particular category which causes a great amount of concern within the service. And a lot of fraud that we're seeing now come forward, it involves fraud of our senior citizens. And we need to have education and prevention programs in place so that we can protect those.
Oh, sorry, Chief. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Our senior demographic is on the rise as well. And technology is making it easier to kind of cheat them out of their hard-earned money and all that.
And that's why we've been very aggressive with our senior support officers, with our fraud officers, and getting out and speaking to the seniors about the different scams that are out there so that they can protect themselves.
Chief, we got about 2 minutes left. Let's just go through this last slide.
I'll go quickly through these. The issue of child pornography is one would look at that and say, well, 21 cases. Well, that, you know what? That's not bad. That's low. That's good.
Still too high in my eyes, Chief.
Absolutely, absolutely a zero tolerance issue for us as investigators. Yeah. And the problem behind these is that on the technology side is each one of these cases, when we get involved with the computers and that, we're looking at 700 to 1 million images. Death investigations, again, about 700 a year. Suicides, those numbers are there. I've already spoken to the issue of those that suffer mental illness and our responsibility as police officers to get them to proper care. The last, one of the last categories there, about 2,500 people go missing in our city every single year, and we have the same process, the same policies, the same response. We assign search masters, we take the occurrence, we investigate, and we never stop looking until we find those people. And in fact, Mike, sometimes we never find them. But it's an important thing to know that we respond the same way all the time.
Yeah, that's a shocking one for me, just seeing that one. We have just under a minute and a half or so, Chief. This has been fantastic. There was a number of topics we didn't get to, a number of ongoing things that kind of hit the news. We have the guy on the bike who's been known as the Slasher. I know we're looking for tips for him still. The Moss cartoon that was just recently happened early December. I know if you go to thespec.com or if you go to Hamilton Police Twitter, Facebook, you can see a video of who you might think the vehicle be. The Bold Street arson, just very recently. Can you maybe just touch on that one before we wrap up here?
Well, the first thing we need to talk about in the Bold Street fire was the response of our police officers, our fire service, and our EMS. It was a coordinated response. Our officers were first on scene. They entered the building, secured the area, swept the stairwells, got people out. They did an evacuation. We had 4 officers injured in that with minor smoke inhalation. Our officers did a phenomenal job. That investigation, we have made an arrest. Tim Bauer, our arson officer, has done the investigation. We did arrest an individual for that offense yesterday. That now will progress through court. With respect to hate crime, it is a focus for us every single day, and we absolutely will remain, because we will not tolerate hatred or hate crime in our community at all.
Chief, I got to say, this has been a great start for 2012, and I would like to thank you so much for coming in. I look forward to seeing you and your staff throughout the next 6 months. Folks, it has been an absolute pleasure hosting Police Watch 2012. Of course, if you have any tips, make sure you go to Crime Stoppers. You can call them at 1-888-222-8477. Go to Facebook or Twitter, follow Hamilton Police. On behalf of Officer Wagner, Police Chief Glenn DeCare, I am Mike Fortune. Happy New Year 2012, and we will see you in a month's time. Take care, Hamilton.